My fiancée Clara had fallen in love with a broke student I was personally funding. She was resolute in her decision to break our engagement, so much so that she ignored her own parents' pleas and came to my family home to call things off herself. The announcement sent a shockwave through the room. My father was visibly shaking with a quiet rage, and my mother looked so pale I thought she might faint. In a single night, I went from being one half of a power couple to the primary laughingstock of our entire social circle. What they couldn't see, however, was the meeting our family held later that same day. The three of us sat around the large dining table, the air thick with purpose rather than despair. My dad, sipping his tea as if discussing a minor business setback, spoke first. "Let's lie low for a bit," he suggested, his voice steady. "Go abroad, get some more experience under your belt, and then come back when you're ready." My mother, ever the strategist, was already looking ahead. "You need to change your image," she chimed in, her composure absolute. "He gets to play the part of the devoted romantic puppy. You need to become the unshakable CEO." A slow smirk spread across my face. "In that case," I said, my voice low and determined, "I'll start by acquiring her family's business." 3 years later, I returned home. My friends organized a welcome-back party for me at a chic downtown lounge. The atmosphere was celebratory, filled with the sound of clinking glasses and easy conversation. Then, the main door swung open and an immediate chill swept through the room. Standing there, framed in the doorway, were Clara and her partner, Mark. I looked over, and my eyes met the familiar, clear gaze of my ex-fiancée. Her eyes lingered on me for a moment too long, while Mark, standing beside her, looked obviously tense and out of place. My friends exchanged nervous glances, their eyes darting between me and the newcomers. For a second, my mind went completely blank. But then I recovered, offering a casual gesture toward an empty table. "Come on in," I said, my tone light as if their arrival was the most natural thing in the world. "Have a seat." I acted as if the past 3 years of betrayal and humiliation had never happened. Clara's eyes flickered with a complicated mix of emotions she couldn't voice, but she eventually gave a soft nod of agreement. Mark sat down close beside her, trying to project an air of composure he clearly didn't feel. The others in the room, all aware of our history, looked at him with undisguised disdain. He was once a charity case, a student whose education I had generously funded, and he had repaid that kindness by stealing the woman I was supposed to marry. It was a level of ingratitude that no one in our circle could respect. Over the years, my family's business had not just grown, it had flourished, expanding to a scale that dwarfed the Sterling family's company. Everyone at that party, whether out of genuine sympathy for me or a pragmatic desire to stay in my good graces, made a point of deliberately ignoring Mark. He was left to cast helpless looks at Clara, seeking some kind of support, only to be met with her unexpected silence. I could feel her stealing glances in my direction, and even in the dim lighting of the lounge, I could see the fine sheen of sweat on Mark's brow. I had seen enough of this little drama. I leisurely raised my glass, breaking the strained silence. "You're late," I announced, my voice carrying across the room. "That means you have to drink 3 glasses as punishment. This is my homecoming party, after all. You should show some respect, right?" The crowd, sensing the shift, eagerly chimed in. "Exactly! It's Leo's night!" Clara hesitated for only a moment before picking up her glass and downing its contents in one go. After the 3rd glass, her hand was trembling slightly as she set it back on the table. When our eyes met again, I saw a flicker of apology in them. I let out a soft, sneering laugh and turned my attention to Mark, who was holding his glass with a white-knuckled grip. He looked as stiff as a board, as if he were sitting on pins and needles. Just as I was about to clink my glass against his, He abruptly stood up. "Sorry," he mumbled hastily. "My stomach's acting up. I've got to use the restroom." He practically fled the room. A wave of mocking laughter erupted as soon as he was gone. "Clara, your boyfriend is such a coward," someone called out. "Leo gave him an easy out and he still ran away." Clara's face was a mixture of frustration and embarrassment. "He's been having stomach issues," she tried to explain. "He really can't drink." Mark's decision to hide in the restroom only made the atmosphere more awkward. Some of my friends who had no business connections to Clara's family were getting restless, their disdain for the situation growing more palpable. I felt my own temper begin to rise, but I quickly suppressed it. Reaching out to stop a friend from saying something he'd regret, I flashed a gentle, disarming smile. "We're all friends here," I said calmly. "No need to sweat the small stuff. Let's just leave the past in the past." I glanced toward Clara, raising my glass in a gesture of peace before downing my drink. Her expression softened, and a hint of a smile touched her eyes. Everyone understood this was my way of calling a truce, and the mood in the room began to pick up again. Midway through the party, I stepped out onto the balcony for some fresh air, letting the buzz of alcohol and conversation fade behind me. A moment later, I heard Clara's voice. "Leo, how have you been these past 3 years?" The cool night breeze stirred my clothes, creating a strangely dramatic backdrop for our reunion. When I turned to face her, I saw a flash of surprise and a storm of mixed emotions in her eyes. "Remember to take your medication," I said, deflecting her question and focusing instead on her health. "And don't drink too much." She instinctively touched her chest, looking momentarily lost. Clara had a congenital heart condition and was an incredibly picky eater. I had spent an entire year researching her dietary needs, crafting a personalized nutrition plan to keep her healthy. I used to be the one nagging her to eat on time, the one who always had her heart medicine and a snack on hand just in case. And yet, I had lost her to a guy who took her on merry-go-round rides. Clara's gaze grew complicated. "Don't you hate me?" she asked softly. I just shook my head. "It's in the past. We never had any unsolvable issues. It's like they say in business. If one deal doesn't work out, we can still be friends." Clara let out a light chuckle, and the tension between us eased. "You've come to terms with it," she said, almost teasingly. I smiled back. "Maybe we were never meant to be lovers, but that doesn't mean we can't be friends, right?" After our engagement ended 3 years ago, our families had gone from close allies to bitter adversaries. The rivalry was intense, but in that time my family's enterprise had tripled in value, and I had quickly earned a reputation as a rising star in the industry. Wealthy elders were now advising their own children to befriend me if they could, and to be wary of antagonizing me if they couldn't. Since my return, I had been inundated with new friends eager for my time. One more, like Clara, wouldn't make a difference. Besides, there was no longer a need for our families to be at odds. Her presence at my party suggested that her family was hoping to mend fences. Despite their vast network, they had been slipping lately and couldn't afford to make any more powerful enemies. Clara seemed to understand my implication, and the tension in her face relaxed. She joined me, leaning against the balcony railing, and we began to exchange stories about our last 3 years. The conversation flowed more naturally than I expected. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a light-colored shirt disappear around a corner. A grin tugged at my lips. The days ahead were going to be interesting. After that evening, Clara began to reach out to me more often. She asked for a copy of her old nutrition plan, which I gladly sent over. I included some new health tips, gently urging her to take better care of herself. She would act as if she found my concern annoying, but there was an undeniable warmth hidden beneath her words. Lately, my every move had become the talk of the business world. Major financial media outlets were all scrambling to cover my investment strategies and analyze my business acumen. Even my social life was suddenly under a microscope. Through it all, Clara was always the first person to like and comment on any news about me. She'd joke with me in a light-hearted tone. "I heard you just bought another tech company. You're quite the business genius." Or, "You're such a hot commodity now. When are you planning to settle down?" I would occasionally reply to her harmless comments, but if anything hinted at flirting, I would pretend I hadn't seen it. Recently, an online debate about a popular TV show's cheating storyline had gotten a lot of people talking about relationships. I posted a long piece on my social media sharing my take on the subject. A few minutes later, Clara called me. She started venting about the show's characters, talking about how they didn't know how to appreciate each other. I listened quietly, chiming in with a comment here and there. Before we knew it, we had been on the phone for over an hour. Suddenly, I heard Mark's voice in the background on her end. "Clara? Are you still working this late?" She hesitated, not hanging up, but her tone became a bit colder. "What are you doing here?" Mark's voice rose, becoming demanding. "Are you on the phone with him again?" At that point, I hung up. It was their personal issue, and I knew better than to get involved directly. Humming a little tune, my eyes fell on the clock. My fingers tapped lightly on the table. 3 minutes later, Clara called back. She sounded exhausted. "Sorry, Leo, for getting you involved in that." "It's nothing," I said softly. "I understand where Mark is coming from. He probably cares a lot about you. You should spend more time with him. Let him know he's important to you." I paused for a moment before adding, "Our past relationship is unique. It's understandable that he has issues with it. We should probably hang out less from now on." Clara was silent for a moment, and though she tried to hide it, I could sense her impatience. "I've been so good to him, and yet he's never satisfied," she muttered. What an ungrateful guy. After the call, I couldn't help but let out a cold chuckle. Even though I had been living abroad, nothing happening back home ever escaped my notice. I knew that after canceling our engagement, Clara had kneeled in her family's home for a full week, fasting, to convince them to accept Mark. Meanwhile, Mark waited outside her house day after day, looking worn and desperate, just hoping for a glimpse of her. It was a classic love story, the rich girl and the poor boy defying the world to be together. Eventually, her family caved. They had overcome all the obstacles. Whenever their story was told, someone would always pretend to wipe away a tear that wasn't there. "This is true love," they'd say. But happily ever after is often just the beginning of a harsh reality. When business deals started falling through, her family couldn't bring themselves to blame their beloved daughter. So they took out all their frustrations on Mark. They constantly picked on him, making his life difficult. If he wanted to enjoy the benefits of being with Clara, he had to learn how to please his future wife and her family. Thinking of getting a job? A complete pipe dream. There was no way the family would let an outsider manage their business. Going to parties? Forget it. They didn't want people gossiping that their daughter was supporting a freeloader. Mark had just graduated and had never had the chance to prove himself professionally, and now he was being forced to give up his promising future. Clara had promised him the best life, so he willingly gave up everything. Who cares about a career when you can be with a wealthy woman? He saw it as the ultimate win. But over time, he grew suspicious and intensely jealous, constantly monitoring any man who came near Clara. A few times it might have seemed charming, but after a while, who could put up with that? A romance born from a spur-of-the-moment passion could never stand up to the inherent selfishness of human nature. I sighed softly, turning my gaze to Ethan, another young man I had supported, who had since become my indispensable assistant. "What do you think about someone who takes advantage of a situation like that?" I asked. Ethan's face was an expressionless mask, but his disdain was clear. trying to rise up with the help of a rich woman. I'll never understand it. I pondered for a moment before adding casually, I heard Mark has been seeing someone else lately. Ethan simply nodded. I'll handle it. After that conversation, I began to distance myself from Clara. I rarely replied to her messages, and always found an excuse to skip any gathering she invited me to. This sudden cold shoulder sent her into a panic. She sought out Ethan, trying every way she could to get a meeting with me. Ethan sighed, playing his part perfectly. Don't you know? Mark was caught with several social media stars. The boss is dealing with the fallout from that. He's not seeing anyone right now. Clara's face turned pale instantly. Her voice trembled as she asked, How dare he? Realizing his supposed slip-up, Ethan looked troubled. Sorry, that's all I can say. Clara immediately called Mark to demand answers, but her calls went unanswered. She drove to a hotel he frequented and saw him in the elevator, his arm wrapped around a heavily made-up woman. On the drive back, Ethan, who had been tasked with coincidentally giving her a ride, watched in the rearview mirror as Clara scrolled through comments online, her expression growing heavier with each post. Someone on social media had just exposed Mark's private life, claiming he was using Clara's connections to support several aspiring actresses. The post included photos of him and an actress at a fancy restaurant, looking far too cozy. The internet exploded. He was branded with awful names like freeloading scumbag and ingrate. My phone was flooded with calls from friends, congratulating me and saying that Medler had finally gotten what he deserved. I played it cool, telling them, it's not easy for him. Let's not be too harsh. When word of my magnanimous response got out, I gained even more praise within our circle. The bigger the public fuss, the better it was for my plan. I even had my people stir things up behind the scenes to keep the story escalating. It was time to move on to the next phase. When Clara returned home, she was immediately confronted by her parents' wrath. Look at the man you found, her father roared. Now the whole internet is mocking our family. Our company's stock has dropped, and the board is questioning my leadership. You will cut ties with that loser immediately and stop embarrassing us. Clara sat helplessly on the couch, tears streaming down her face. On the way to my office, Ethan vividly described how Mark had been squandering her money, supporting several mistresses, and spending hundreds of thousands a month just on shopping for them. Clara just stared out the window, her eyes red in the reflection. She pushed open my office door and found me buried under a mountain of paperwork. Stacks of reports and contracts were piled high on my desk. The afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden, exhausted outline around me. Clara's fingers curled slightly, a hint of pain in her eyes. Leo, she called out softly. I feigned a startled jerk and turned to face her. Clara? What are you doing here? She sighed helplessly. Why didn't you tell me you were so busy with work? I forced a smile, trying to sound casual. It's just the usual stuff, all part of the daily grind. Clara lowered her gaze, hesitating. Is your recent stress related to me? I waved her concern off. Don't even think about it. It's all manageable. I'll sort it out soon. Do you want to join me for some fresh air later? Clara seemed taken aback, looking at me with a newfound fondness. I waved my hand in front of her face, speaking gently. Have you thought about it? She coughed slightly, hiding her embarrassment as a rosy blush spread across her fair face, softening her usually sharp demeanor and reminding me of the girl she used to be. All right, she agreed. I smiled indulgently, pushed aside the files, and let her take me to a nearby amusement park, supposedly to relieve my work stress. Clara insisted we ride the carousel first. As we went around, I brightened up. I haven't been to a place like this in ages, I said. I used to think it was all too childish. Now I realize I neglected to spend time with you like this. She averted her gaze, her eyes sparkling. No, I wasn't considerate enough, she murmured. I began to reflect aloud, remembering how my intense focus on my studies and then on my career meant I had very little time for fun with her. I had wanted to provide her with a better life, but in the process, I had neglected her emotional needs. Seeing other couples laughing and enjoying themselves, she seemed suddenly lost. First, she wanted to ride the bumper cars. Then she was intrigued by a nearby shooting gallery. Soon, my hands were full of plush toys she had won, while I happily slurped on a cold milk tea, wincing theatrically from the brain freeze. Clara chuckled, a look of genuine relief lighting up her eyes for the first time in a while. Didn't you always avoid things like this? Be careful, your stomach might not like it. I rolled my eyes playfully. Who says I don't love this? Remembering my lines, I shyly bowed my head. I used to put on an act in front of you. Clara was puzzled. What do you mean? We sat down on a bench, and I came clean. You remember how I said I spent every vacation studying in the library? That was a lie? I continued. My dad would take me to poor rural areas to do charity work. He was self-made and wanted to give back, but he also didn't want me to grow up spoiled. I would play with the local kids, climbing hills and crossing rivers like a wild child. And believe it or not, I love street food, like spicy hot pot skewers. The spicier, the better. Recalling those fabricated times, my eyes lit up with feigned nostalgia. Clara watched me attentively, her gaze gentle. I never knew this side of you. I acted a bit embarrassed. Well, you're a lady of class. I didn't want you to think I was beneath you. I have my pride too. And with your health issues, I felt I had to be a role model when I was taking care of you. Clara's soft laugh stopped abruptly. She looked at me deeply, her expression complex, with a hint of something unreadable in her beautiful eyes. Before she could speak, I let out a contented sigh and beamed. But we're friends now. It's so much easier to just speak my mind. The setting sun cast a dreamlike glow over the fairground lights. I stood up and smiled gently. Time to go. Clara drove while I sat silently in the passenger seat. The dim, quiet atmosphere of the car was perfect for introspection. I turned slightly, looking at her reflection in the window. Her brows were furrowed, and she was visibly restless. I waited patiently for her to speak. Sure enough, after a moment, she probed, "Back then, you saved me." Her voice trailed off, as if she was unsure how to continue. I knew exactly what she was referring to. It was back in high school. Clara had encountered some thugs while on a solo hike. I happened to be jogging nearby and rushed to help when I heard her calls for help. I took a few punches, but I managed to stop the attacker. Seeing how shaken she was, I immediately wrapped my jacket around her. "It's okay now, Clara. I'm here." That was the moment she first truly accepted me. After that incident, her family stopped suppressing my family's business ventures and even began planning an engagement between us. Thanks to her family's support, our company grew until we could compete on equal footing. Everyone assumed our union was a sure thing. But then, things took a twist. I had stumbled upon her and Mark in a close moment, and in my anger, I blurted out, "Mark is only with you for a reason." Clara had retorted with a cold, meaningful gaze. "Didn't you also have motives when you saved me?" I looked at Mark, who stood there silent with his head lowered, as Clara pulled him away. Soon after, she ended our engagement to be with him. It was clear this memory was a painful scar for her. The time was right. I glanced sideways at her, a hint of sorrow in my eyes. "Yes," I confessed. "I did have intentions in approaching you." Sitting beside me, her fingers fidgeted anxiously. Because I liked you. As Clara turned to look at me, I let a single tear slip from the corner of my eye. I knew the risk you took defending your classmates from bullies. You were always so brave and kind. That's what I admired about you. And that year I went to the mountains to teach. I happened to bump into you doing charity work there. It felt like fate. I forced a small, pained smile, holding back my fabricated tears. Clara's own eyes grew watery. She reached out and touched my hand, leaning her forehead against it gently. "I'm sorry, Leo," she whispered. "I never knew you felt that way." Her warm tears hit my palm, giving me a jolt. I pulled my hand back and looked into her confused eyes with warmth. "True love is rare. You need to cherish it. Mark is your choice, and you shouldn't blame him for this. I'm sure there's just been some misunderstanding. I believe he's sincere about you." Clara looked both guilty and moved. "You shouldn't have to sacrifice yourself like this," she said. I chuckled lightly and shook my head. "I had a great time today. Let's just say you returned a favor for him." Clara looked at me, her eyes as soft as water. No more words were needed. We both understood. I turned to look at the scenery flashing by outside the window, a meaningful smile curling my lips. When past beauty becomes ordinary, when pride and sincerity fade, and when past glories re-emerge, what choice does a person make? After returning to the country, I took the position of vice president at my family's company. My 3-year stint overseas had been transformative. I had successfully revived a struggling industry, and my projects consistently performed brilliantly. With our financial reports continually improving, even the company veterans praised my skills and abilities. My dad publicly said I still needed more experience, but secretly, he was preparing to retire. While I handled the transition, I had Ethan keep a close eye on Clara and Mark. Their once seemingly unbreakable relationship had started to show serious cracks. They had numerous arguments that always ended poorly. Mark stopped appearing at social gatherings, and Clara didn't even want to return to their shared apartment, moving back into her family's villa instead. Clara's mother was irate about Mark's affairs. Someone had snapped pictures of him getting cozy with a female colleague, and there were reports of him frequenting high-end clubs. Those pictures spread among their family and friends, putting Clara in an incredibly tough spot. Her mom complained that she no longer dared to attend her social functions. Her father, a man who valued his image above all else, threatened to cut ties with Clara and vocally berated Mark, calling him worthless. Mark was devastated. He had hoped Clara would stand up for him like she used to, but what truly broke his heart was her icy silence. "Clara's family is in chaos now," my mom said, sipping her tea. "Mark is a thankless wretch after all we did for him," my dad added. I couldn't help but sigh dramatically. "Let's not gloat." We all exchanged knowing smiles. I recalled our private meeting in the study the day I returned. Dad had rocked his teacup in his hand and spoken slowly. "Don't rush to make a decision. Give it time. In these 3 years you didn't contact each other. She must have thought of you fondly. The things you experienced together, the music you listened to, the places you went. No one else can replace those memories. Even if she's with Mark now, you have a special place in her heart." Mom, fiddling with her jade bracelet, added softly, "Women like competent men who can protect them. Look at Mark, hiding behind Clara during tough times. A weak man like that will only disappoint her. When she sees your strength, what will she think of that coward?" The final step was the classic play hard to get, to make her feel the crisis of losing me for good. When Clara finally asked to meet me, I arranged it so I had just finished a date. Once we were at the cafe, I slumped in my chair, looking defeated. "My parents are pressing me to get married," I said. Clara's smile was a bit forced. "Why the sudden rush?" she asked. "They're retiring soon. They want a grandchild, I guess." Suddenly, a thought seemed to cross my mind, and I leaned in closer to her. "How about—" Her fingers gently traced the edge of her cup, her body tense. "Do you know any pretty, sweet girls you could introduce me to?" I watched as Clara's face darkened, her expression clearly displeased. "Is that what you came to say?" she asked, her tone tinged with obvious dissatisfaction. I shrugged helplessly. "What can I do? Dating is tedious, and the conversations just don't click." Clara seemed relieved by that, but then she looked up to find me watching her, deep in thought. I lazily drawled, "What did you think I wanted to say?" Clara coughed gently, her ears turning slightly pink as she murmured, "Nothing." I grinned and pointed to her handbag. "Your phone's been vibrating non-stop. Is it Mark? Maybe you should head back." At the mention of his name, Clara's eyes turned icy. She pulled out her phone and dismissed the call. "Just a spam call," she said coldly. I smiled slightly and softened my voice even more. "I know you found out about him and that influencer, but maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Even if Mark's been foolish, his feelings for you are real. Isn't there anything worth talking about? You've been together for so long. There's no need to let a momentary issue drive such a wedge between you." Looking somber, I continued, "Remember that high school basketball game? I bought sports drinks for Mark and the other guys because they were training late. I might have overdone it because Mark just walked off. I kept wondering if I did something wrong to make him so uneasy." Clara frowned, the memory making her expression grow colder. With a chill in her voice, she said, "What did you do wrong? You've always helped him, gotten him internships, supported him financially. He's the one with insecurities, feeling emasculated by your help. If he was so proud, he shouldn't have accepted it in the first place. Why pretend to be noble?" I raised an eyebrow. Her words carried weight. She clearly remembered those days. Back then, seeing Clara watching from the sidelines, Mark had thought I was showing off in front of the girl he liked. He felt crushed in front of his crush, which is why he stormed off. The sun was shining, butterflies fluttered around, and a boy and a girl exchanged glances from a distance. And I stood on the second floor, taking in the entire scene. This was the beginning of their tangled fate. I smirked slightly. To bring someone down, you must first drive them mad. Hearing the woman he loved say things that hurt his self-esteem and questioned his prospects, would he let go or hold on even tighter? I was intrigued to find out. A few days later, news broke that Clara was pregnant and that she and Mark were getting engaged. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. Mark had genuinely apologized and begged for her forgiveness, and Clara eventually forgave his betrayal. Whether someone had advised him or he had figured it out himself, he realized he couldn't afford to let Clara go. He started showering her with affection, promising he would only love her for the rest of his life and would never mess up again. This renewed Clara's hope in their love. My dad was feeding the koi fish in our pond, a smirk on his face. "She forgave the man who cheated on her," he said. "Not only did she reconcile, but she's still willing to marry him, pretending nothing ever happened." Mom scoffed, her eyes filled with sarcasm. "She's so love-struck, she's forgotten how shameless her man can be." I ignored another call from Clara, feeling completely at ease. Soon, it was time for my birthday party. It was also my official debut into the business world, so I had to host a grand event for networking and future collaborations. Clara and Mark were there, their fingers intertwined as they stood in a corner, looking like a perfect match. I raised my glass to them from afar, before moving on to mingle with other guests. Amidst the beautifully dressed crowd and the clatter of glasses, I moved confidently in my tailored black suit, chatting effortlessly with various CEOs. No matter where I went, I could feel a pair of eyes following me. I threw a smile back in their direction. Clara's eyes lit up instantly, and she subconsciously started walking toward me. Mark, smiling awkwardly, was pulled along, and he unexpectedly crashed right into a waiter carrying a tray of drinks. A sudden cry disrupted the party's harmony. The glasses on the tray shattered, soaking Mark's tailored suit in red liquid. He stood there, embarrassed and pale, as guests who knew Clara shook their heads at his state. Whispers filled the room. Words like mismatched, crude, and foolish pierced his ears. His face flushed, and he clenched his teeth in frustration. Clara remained expressionless, completely indifferent. Seizing the moment, I gracefully approached him and politely offered to help him get changed. The crowd's gaze turned meaningful. Clara's tense expression softened slightly, and she glanced my way with a hint of gratitude and heat in her eyes. "Sorry for disturbing your party," she said, not even noticing Mark's red-rimmed eyes or the tension in his clenched fists. I shook my head lightly. "It's nothing." She wanted to say more, but I was already leading Mark away. In the changing room, Mark turned and glared at me. "Seeing me embarrassed like this? You must be enjoying this, huh?" I kept my gaze even. "What do you mean?" Mark snorted. "Don't pretend. I know you're just a spoiled jerk flaunting your family's name. What's there to be proud of?" I sighed softly. Being weak isn't an excuse for being reckless. My parents built this company from scratch, and I'm just carrying on their legacy. What's wrong with that? But you had a shot at making something of yourself. Why throw it all away for one person? I don't get it. I had first met Mark when he was 17, at a charity event. He was covered in bruises from his alcoholic stepfather, and his defiance and anger left an impression on me. After we called the police, he begged us to take him away, desperate to escape that violent home. Ethan, who came from a similar situation, was different. He was determined. "I'm changing my fate with knowledge," he had said. I supported them both, pity for Mark, respect for Ethan. I never interfered with their choices, yet years later they had chosen vastly different paths. Mark's fists clenched, his face burning with anger, tears welling in his eyes. "Your arrogance is what's most infuriating. What's wrong with seeking true love? Clara is the only one who ever cared for me. She gave me hope. Is it wrong to love her? You think giving me money means you can control my life? Yeah, I stole your fiancé. But what you didn't know is that Clara is sick of your arrogance too. Your kindness is just a vanity act." I laughed coldly. "I paid your tuition, gave you resources, mentored you. This is controlling you? You never considered what I wanted." His rage grew, his voice bitter. "You used my situation to keep me away from Clara. Isn't that control?" "Not true," I smiled cryptically. "Your meeting her was my doing. It's interesting, isn't it? Why is her care for you genuine, but my help is condescending? Just because I'm a man?" Sam paused, then looked embarrassed, gritting his teeth. "She truly cares about me. You just flaunt your mercy, wanting everyone to look up to you." Cutting him off, my face reflected my disappointment. "So that's who I am to you." Before I could finish, the door burst open. "Leo!" It was Clara's worried voice. She steadied my supposedly shaking frame and turned to Mark, coldly demanding, "What cruel words did you just hurl at Leo?" Mark punched the wall, seething. "Why do you always care about him?" Ethan interjected from the doorway. "I overheard words like fiancé, revenge, and charity." Mark's voice suddenly went sharp. "What's Ethan's credibility? He's eating out of Leo's hand. Of course he's going to back him up." The room fell silent. Ethan snorted. "And weren't you just the boss's favorite? So why did you go and pull a steal your fiancé kind of move?" That stirred up a storm. Accusations and curses flew at Mark from every direction. He was swamped by everyone's complaints. I heard my father's furious roar from the hallway. "Clara, look at what this man beside you has done." Clara's grip tightened on my arm, but she didn't let go. "I'm sorry, Uncle," she admitted, her head lowered. "I've decided to break off the engagement with Mark." Mark sank to the floor with a thud. He clung desperately to the hem of Clara's dress, his voice shaky. "Clara, I know I messed up, but we have a child. What about our baby?" Without a hint of emotion, Clara said 2 words. "Terminate it." She walked away briskly, Mark trailing after her as they escaped the scene. During this time, I kept thinking back to my conversation with Mark. People are so unpredictable. How can you ever tell what's sincere and what's fake? There was a post that made the rounds on social media about a kid from a poor background who, after graduating, married into a wealthy family, causing a huge stir. The consensus was that for 2 people to be together, they need to be equals, both in their feelings and their social status. Build your career first, then start a family. There are so many painful lessons out there. So why are people still so stubborn? I think I finally figured it out. Some people don't actually care about love. They see marriage as a ladder to climb higher. My parents and I have taken each step carefully to get where we are today. The journey has been long, but every step has been solid. Shortcuts might save time, but they come with high risks. If you're not careful, you'll fall into a deep pit. Mark targets me everywhere simply because he's jealous of my background. He acts holier than thou, yet he's never content. He thought that by stealing Clara, he had somehow defeated me, convincing himself he was on the moral high ground. To him, Clara was both his last lifeline and his ultimate trophy. Once he loses her, he's back to square one. Since he chose the crooked path, he has to face the consequences. Success or destruction, it's all up to fate. When I saw Clara again, her face was weary, but her eyes were bright. "Leo, I've missed you." "What brings you here?" I asked, feigning confusion. She gently took my hand and held it to her cheek. Tearfully, she said, "Leo, I know I was wrong. Can you forgive me?" I withdrew my hand and turned to the window, letting my eyes water despite myself. "Forgive you or not, it doesn't matter. It's over. You're soon to be with Mark." "No way!" Clara cut me off, desperate. I just realized his true nature now. Not only did he try to drive us apart, but he also cheated on me out of jealousy. You helped change his fate, and he bit the hand that fed him, just like in the story of the farmer and the snake. I can't spend my life with someone like that. Leo, it's my fault for being foolish, for being unable to see people clearly or understand my own heart. You have every reason to resent me. Actually, you know me best. We were meant to be— I closed my eyes, shaking my head. If she hadn't given him the opportunity, how could Mark have ever succeeded? Ah, women in love. One moment they wish to grab the stars and the moon to make you happy. The next, they become a dagger striking at your softest spots, all while acting completely innocent. Clara didn't notice my internal sneer. Thinking I was heartbroken, her eyes showed a hint of hope, and her tone softened. "Leo, let me prove it to you with my actions. Let me take care of you during this time, okay? Don't worry, I'll stay by your side." She then switched off her phone, exhaling deeply as if she had finally found a safe refuge. I smiled and nodded. All right. Clara had no idea that while she was hiding from reality with me, chaos was brewing outside. My father teamed up with other industry giants and began systematically targeting her family's company. Simultaneously, scandals about the Sterling Corporation surfaced, everything from tax evasion and engineering accidents to malicious competition, you name it. The company, built on real estate, had many projects with shady dealings, some of which had even led to casualties. Her influential father had always managed to hush them up, But my father was a famous philanthropist. He had helped countless people in need over the years. It was only natural that someone would be seeking payback. With concrete evidence in hand, the company's stock plummeted as public debate raged. My father cashed in big on the stock market and began happily preparing for the holiday season. When Ethan came to see me, I was in the garden building a snowman with Clara. Lately, she seemed more relaxed than ever, chatting non-stop. She sheltered me from the wind, her slender hands turning red from the cold. Bending down, she handed me 2 small stones. "Only the eyes are missing," she said with a smile. I looked at her, smiling back, but I didn't take the stones. "Leo?" she asked, puzzled. "What's wrong?" The next thing she knew, I had kicked the snowman's head clean off. A smirk played on my face. "Sorry, game over." Clara froze, her lips trembling. "Leo." I adjusted my suit and walked away. Behind me, Ethan looked thoughtful. I casually waved goodbye to him. "From now on, call me boss." "Even if their company is sinking, the Sterlings won't go down easy," my mother said, her poised, graceful face showing no trace of emotion. "They've been dealt a blow. It's enough. Their company can't bounce back from this. Most importantly, John Sterling is finished." My dad had been starting out, just gaining a foothold in the industry, when Mr. Sterling targeted him at every turn. At business dinners, he would humiliate him in front of other entrepreneurs. He even once treated my mother like a commodity, and that crossed a line my father would never forgive. That debt was never forgotten. From the day I saved Clara, every step we took followed our family's principle: be clear on revenge and gratitude. My mother taught me, how can you repay kindness if you are kind to your enemies? A metaphysical expert close to our family once said that being persecuted feels like your luck is being snatched away, and getting justice is like regaining that luck. If you keep swallowing your pride, your luck drains away, and eventually, everyone thinks they can bully you. That's why I never backed down. My dad had a serious look on his face, but a small smirk played on his lips. "Thanks to Mark, our pawn." I nodded slightly. If Clara hadn't publicly broken off our engagement 3 years ago, we wouldn't have had a good reason to fall out with her family. Mark was losing his mind. He went on a live stream calling me a homewrecker, really laying it on thick, accusing me of stealing his love and ruining their relationship. The public was totally eating it up. Then Clara herself stepped up to clear my name, exposing how I had financially supported Mark all along. People in the know started speaking up, and internet detectives dug into my past, finding nothing but charity work. Public opinion flipped instantly. My family's reputation hit an all-time high, and our stocks went through the roof. Meanwhile, Mark was condemned by everyone and completely ruined. I ran into Clara and Mark again at a business event. They had both been kicked out of their company's board. Clara was a wreck. There was no way she could make a comeback, surrounded by vultures. She had to use a friend's connection just to get in and see me. When we met, she was a shadow of her former beautiful self. Haggard, defeated, with red-rimmed eyes as she glared at me. "You never loved me," she accused. I shook my head lightly. "I did care once." She froze, her lips trembling and pale. Honestly, I did have an agenda when I first approached her, but over time I couldn't help but feel drawn to her. My feelings had become real, almost uncontrollable, until I realized she had feelings for Mark. The betrayal from the 2 people closest to me was a sobering wake-up call. After many long nights of sitting up alone, I backed off and decided to go with the flow of our plan. "Leo." Her tears welled up as she instinctively reached for me. I smiled and stepped back, looking past her at an enraged Mark standing behind her. "You both got a taste of the consequences of greed," I said. Mark dropped his act, trembling with rage. "You planned this all along, Leo. You're a backstabbing jerk. Karma's going to get you. I looked at him calmly. From the day I saved you, maybe this was destiny. The ancients were right. Helping the good leads to good karma, but saving evil leads to a backstab. Mark was speechless for a moment. I dropped my smile and got closer to him. Fathers can't stand betrayal from their own. I can't forgive a traitor I helped. Call me a hypocrite, call me arrogant, but saving you and raising you is the cold, hard fact. You betray me, so don't blame me for being ruthless. I patted his stiff shoulder, making him shiver. He finally showed fear, tears in his eyes. I went back to a light-hearted smile. Go on then. I hope you two stay together forever. After Clara's fall from grace, everyone piled on. She and Mark became a running joke. Clara changed, drowning her sorrows in alcohol. But surprisingly, she did end up marrying Mark. People wondered if it was true love after all. I just sneered. Mark had embarrassed her family so much, so why did her parents agree to the marriage? Ethan dug deep and found out. It turns out Clara had fertility issues, and this might be her only chance to have a child. How could she not take it? What they didn't know was that Mark had dirt on them. He knew they despised him and would try to destroy him, so he was ready to fight back, to make them pay for everything. It was going to be a relentless, ugly battle. Is this another kind of karma? I remarked indifferently. Ethan was silent, a bit of melancholy in his eyes. This was all his choice. A call interrupted my thoughts. I couldn't help but soften. Ethan, let's head home for dinner. Dad caught a big fish today. Ethan's stern face warmed, like ice melting in the spring. Sure,